So, a warm welcome to the sixth episode of Candid Conversation, and thank you so much, Angeline, for being a part with us today. We'll start off by the first question. You work in a space of prevention of domestic violence. How did this journey begin, and why did you choose to work for it?
Now, for me, the way that I ended up working with gender violence is pretty organic. It was a way of you keep on hearing stories throughout. I had my
Correct.
own personal stories in the process, and it came to a point where I wanted to give back. I had a lot of, what do you say, saviors along the way. There were a lot of people who were there to hear my story. And I realized down the line, if I'm not able to change another person's world, even if it's for just a matter of an hour, that would be the best thing that I can do. I can work in every different space. I can work. I mean, I was an entrepreneur, I was a banker. It all added very well to my bank account, but somewhere something was lacking. The human element was missing. And down the line, I realized this is a space that nobody really talks much about. Nobody wants to get involved in gender violence. The moment you say that, you say that, oh, it's a problem for women. Oh, it's something that happens only in other people's houses. It happens between the lower income groups. Thing is, the reality is every single one of us, and I'm saying men or women, we would have faced gender violence in some form of the other. And when we're saying gender violence, we're thinking only of, somebody being hurt and bandaged and ending up in hospitals and dowry deaths. And no, not really. It happens even in the most subtle of ways. We don't even recognize emotional abuse as abuse anymore. We don't know how to see that a relationship can be toxic. And I realized that sharing my experience, sharing my story, being part of just listening to somebody else is very important. At that point, when it comes to a problem that you're facing within your relationships, you have the solution already, except you are not ready or willing to take the answer. This is what I have to do. You're not ready in that point. You just need to have a ventilation point. You need to be able to tell it to someone. Just be that listening ear. That's what I thought. And that's how I ended up with Bembala.
Well, that's actually very true. Uh, do you think women and children are disproportionately impacted or subjected to abuse?
We know our statistics, don't we? It's pretty obvious there. Thing is that when it comes to women, there has been the patriarchal norms have been set in place. It's set in stone almost. It's very, very subtle. Now, you have, just suppose there are two kids walking in, your son and your daughter are walking in at home. The time the son and the daughter is born, both of them are thirsty. The dad and the mom are sitting there. The dad might say, Dad, just get them a glass of water. The dad may not get up to get both of them a glass of water. Or for
True.
example, the dad is walking in late at night, late in the evening or something. It's sort of expected either the mother or the daughter would get the dad a glass of water. As simple as that. The son might be sitting, all three of them would be sitting on the sofa watching something, but somehow we automatically, either the wife, the mother gets up or the daughter gets up, and we don't see anything abnormal in it, do we? It's this is how it
It's
has been.
correct.
It's very normal.
It
Now,
is.
is this violence? No, it's not violence. It is pretty much a cultural norm that has been set into place, and you expect to follow it. Tomorrow, when this particular son in our example gets married, and what do you expect? He would expect his wife or his spouse to follow the similar patterns. The the new wife, she may not be coming from such a similar background, and she'll be wondering, why, if you want a glass of water, get it yourself. Why do I have to get it for you? An argument starts there. The son
True.
doesn't see what was wrong there. Like, "Hey, just a glass of water. Why are you making such a big drama?" You see the word, the drama coming out there? The word drama is like, why are you creating so much of drama? She said, no, I'm not creating any drama. If you want a glass of water, can you get it yourself? That is where it starts off. Root patriarchy, which is rooted in our systems. We don't really realize it. Who does the laundry in your house?
It's my mom who does the laundry
Oh,
in my house.
do you know how to work a washing machine?
I haven't done it, but yeah,
What's
actually, I haven't.
what stops you? It's just
Uh,
pressing a few buttons or
no,
asking mom, how do I do it? Isn't it? True, you
yeah,
might get scolded because you mixed all the colors and the whites together. It's a
correct.
given. But
True.
it never occurs to us that I can wash my dishes, I can wash my clothes, I can change the bedspread. Uh, Who hangs the clothes after the laundry is done?
It's mostly my mom or sister, so that's how it goes.
You someone who was enlightened about gender violence, who's really looking at this thing. Even within your own homes, there is this rooted norms of patriarchy that you're following. And
True.
why it is conditioned? It's okay. Like Amma can do it, my sister can do it. Why do Amma, I have to finish this? This is so normally said. How much of a time does it take to put your own laundry in the machine? Or it just running it. And I'm not talking about this is about gender bias here. This is not just gender violence. Gender violence stems from gender bias, which creates a sense of entitlement. Expect that from your future partner.
Got it.
Isn't it that simple?
Yeah, it is actually very simple. Because in terms of my home, I feel my mom does most of the work, but
Mm.
I'll actually be a helping hand. But I don't think
Mm.
I do enough justice, but I try my best.
Self. And Rikita, okay, fine, again. So, like, what's happening here is this with this conditioning when people get into relationships, and I'm not even talking about marriage at this point. I'm talking about kids your age who are in a significant relationship with a significant other. Where do these arguments stem from? It stems from our sense of entitlement. That this is what I expect of you. Who has given us any right to expect anything from another person? Isn't it?
Really.
And then like women, once they're married, they have responsibilities. They become mums. So when you're a mother, you obviously have to take care of the newborn. Yes, that is a biologically appointed norm. Great. How about getting back to work? Who changes the diaper? Okay. No, this
True.
is the way it was done in my house. So that is the way you should bring up my son, my daughter. The word, the my comes, it is no longer ours.
What are the immediate steps that a person should take in a situation of abuse?
Now, the thing is that you need to finally define what abuse is. Many a time, people realize only when there is a mark on your body, a physical form of attack, only that they recognize it as abuse, okay, or violence. How do you, like someone has been, okay, let me find a story. Wait. Now, suppose you are out at a public function or a wedding with your partner, okay? Your partner is saying very snide, very sneaky comments to you, not physically harming you, but saying, oh, you look very fat. Your lipstick reminds me of something else. Look at your nails. Can't you see the other women? See how well dressed. You're going on saying this mean, cruel things in your ear. Nobody is hearing it. It's very quiet, just whispered to you. But it's going on. It's like somebody taking a pin and prodding you once, then again, then again, then again. It is just a pinprick, isn't it? It is not something which is huge and humongous and bleeding all over. No, it's a tiny prick. But this is going on and on and on and on again. See, about like half an hour, 1 hour into it, you lose control. You raise your voice and you shout. Just can you just shut up? Hmm? What do the people around see? Who do the people notice as the one who's creating a scene?
The
The
girl,
one who said shut up, isn't it?
maybe.
Okay. So who's the crazy one here,
The one who said it?
right?
True.
How do you prove otherwise? How do you prove? Suppose tomorrow you go to a court, you go to a police station. How do you prove that you are not the psycho? How do you prove that you were the one? Because finally there is not a single mark on you. You don't have any way of proving it. So when it comes to any case of abuse, documentation is important. Write it down. We tell all our survivors, we don't use the term victim. Victim means you're somewhere still stuck in it. A person who has so much as gotten the courage to talk to any single person, might be even to a neighbor, we should term them a survivor. They have survived something which is impossible for most of us to even comprehend. What happens behind the closed doors No one has any idea, because on the outside they might be the most respectable, most well-educated, most polite, most helpful people even. The perpetrators here, they would be cruel only to their spouse, but they would be a standing figure, one of the pillar of something in our society. How do you prove that you are the one, that you are the survivor here? Documentation is important. And then again, many a time when actual instances of physical abuse happens, the survivor refuses to go to a hospital. And even if she does go to a hospital and the doctors say, like, this seems like a case of domestic violence, should I register a medico legal complaint, an MLC? Should an MLC be done? They say, no, my husband will get in trouble. My mother-in-law will get in trouble. Don't do it. That's the feeling that you have to uphold society. The very same person will never hit an auto driver that they go traveling in. They won't get into a fight with their co-worker, with their boss, isn't it?
True.
Why does this behavior happen only at home, to the wife or the child or the mother? Why does it happen at home? That means a person can modify their behavior, is it not? Outside, when the door is open or when there are visitors home, they are able to actually modify their behavior. They can behave in a way. So it is not actually something where they lost control. Because if you see, work situations are way more stressful than home should be. Home should be a safe place, isn't it? Now, a chapati is not round enough. Is that reason to bat someone's nose in? What gives us the entitlement, and what gives us the belief, feeling that, okay, this is how it should be? And it is your job to make it form,
That's very true.
isn't it? But we imagine that, no, you are at home the entire day. Why didn't you do it? I was working. I'm the one who is earning. Now, there is actually a monetary significance attached to a person who is working outside. So he's a breadwinner, he's the earning member of the family. So doesn't the number of hours this person spends at home doing the so-called household chores doesn't have a monetary value? Or is it one that is actually not of significance? We do not respect it. We do not respect, like I said, like someone gets you a glass of water. How many times do you say thank you? It doesn't occur to us. It's not built into us.
I
We
think
do
the
not
problem
real
is where
problem.
women are being undervalued just because they're at home.
Could be that.
Yeah.
It could be that it's that we are brought up to think that this is what women should do. Paying a child even, it's a very powerless situation. You're seeing that your mom or your sister or your grandmother is being hurt or abused or name called. As a child, you're witness to this entire thing. There's a large part of you which knows it is wrong. But because it is someone like your dad or your grandfather doing it, you believe you love your grandfather, you love your father. So what they're doing can't be wrong. Somewhere in your head, you try to normalize it. You call it cognitive dissonance. Like there is this part of you which is telling you this is something which is very, very wrong. But there's a part of you which wants to make it acceptable just so that you can survive in that household. That cognitive dissonance causes a lot of trauma, a lot of trouble for every person who's undergoing it, because there's one part of your head saying, no, this is not right. Another part is saying, no, after all, it is my dad. How can I say something about it? I often feel that children are the ones who are witnessing it, who are most affected by it because they can't talk to anybody. And being children, no one believes them. They tell it to their teacher, they say, Mone, after all, it is your dad or your grandfather. It's fine. It'll be okay. Your father was angry. What did you do to? One of the biggest questions, the main question that is asked when a woman comes in with a medical legal injury or something, what did you do? Yeah. What did you do? The onus is always on the survivor. What did you do to deserve this? What did you say? Did you not cook food for him? Yeah, it's laughable to think about it, but this is actual situations. Even in the police station, finally, what they try to do is they don't want to break up families. They want to compromise, saying, okay, next time don't create a case. Try to make him understand in a calm way. Being calm seems to be the prerogative of the woman. You are the pacifier. You are the one who has to keep the what do you say, the sanctity of the household name, the society, the status. And it's your job. Now, these are certain cases when there is physical abuse. And what about when it is emotional abuse? Many women who are undergoing emotional abuse don't even realize it is abuse.
The thing is that I feel they don't put it out.
Nobody puts it out because just suppose, who do you tell it to? Can you tell it to your friends? Because when you tell it to your friends, they're going to look at you with these eyes of pity. You know, poor thing. You don't want that because you're having a friend to talk to is your one escape from that, what do you say, that horrifying drama that you're living with. You don't want to be looked at with pity. And even then, suppose you do tell a friend, what will be the friend saying? Like, suppose any of you are in a toxic relationship and you're saying, this is what my girlfriend is doing. She's constantly paranoid. She's always checking my phone. She's always saying that I am talking to someone or the other. If I don't answer her phone in the first 5 rings, she'll start blowing up my phone with texts and messages. You tell this to a friend. What will your friend be telling you about her?
He wouldn't probably understand what
He may
actually.
not understand that. And even if he does, he might say that, Winston, that girl doesn't seem, she seems to be very clingy, might be a potential psycho. She seems very attached to you because, personal space is important in any relationship.
True.
So just suppose like Likat is telling you that. But the very next day, you're coming with more stories about your girlfriend. Likat gives you again more advice saying, look, that girl doesn't seem okay for you. She seems to be paranoid about every relation. 1 day, 2 day, 5 days, 7 days, he's telling the same thing. You have no intention of letting go of your girlfriend. Finally, he'll get fed up and he will distance himself from you because what you are saying is toxic to him. It is actually invading his peace of mind. So he's giving you advice saying, like, look, that relationship doesn't seem to be healthy. Step back. But you're not in a space to step back. Finally, what you end up is you end up isolated from all your friends, your family. And this is what happens in toxic marriages or toxic relationships. Even if you do try telling someone, you're not in a space to leave, and you end up losing all the friends that you have around. So it's normal not to want to tell anyone because the few friends that you do have, you want to keep you want to have that.
So in
And
a
again,
toxic relationship,
hmm.
it's very important to express what you feel, right? So
In any
it's important
relationship,
to say to someone or ask suggestions. So what do you think is the best thing for a girl or a guy to do at that point of time?
you have to realize that any relationship is only just one part of your life. The moment it becomes all consuming, there's something wrong about it. Because till that one day, suppose you fall into a relationship when you're about, say, 19. Just suppose that is your first ever significant relationship. I understand the pheromones, the hormones, everything is high. Your girlfriend or your boyfriend is the entire world to you. This is why you have been living. This is the one thing that gives you meaning. Suddenly, all the silly love songs mean something to you. Till that time, you used to think it was all bakwas. Now, suddenly, it's everything has a rosy glow. But if at that moment you're forgetting that you had family, that you had responsibilities, you had studies, that you had work, that you had friends, if all of these fall away from you, you have to realize, oh, there is something not wholesome about it. Nothing in this world should become so encompassing of us. It shouldn't be that my identity, my happiness is attached to that one person. Who has asked you to give your key of happiness to somebody else? That should always be with you. And that is why people find it very, very hard to leave relationships. Because without them, the world doesn't seem to make sense. People stay in abusive marriages for upwards of 20 years. Because the very idea of being alone, you don't know how to do it. There will be children involved in. How will I tell my child what was going on? Or how will I tell my friends what was going on? Won't people ask me? That's very same thing. You're not ready to. You have invested more than half your life in it. Now what? And if you see, in our society, I'm sorry to say, it still believes that a dead daughter is better than a divorced one. The word divorce is a stigma, isn't it? What happened? So yes, you ended up in a bad relationship. It doesn't mean you will never. Nobody gets into a marriage or a relationship thinking that it is going to go bad. Down the line, when you live with people, you realize that This is not working. And it doesn't always need to have a cause. You're not working together. It is always better to cut off something before it robs you of who you are, isn't it? Now, we were talking about gender violence. A person in your age, well, how do you stop it? Or how do you prevent it? You cannot completely eradicate it. You can eradicate it in your own lives, perhaps, never being perpetrators. But growing up in the society that we are, you see it happening. What can you do to stop it?
I think the best thing what we can do as youngsters is spread awareness as to how important it is to mentally understand a girl and give her the space when she needs it, because it is because I feel that it's very different for a guy and a girl. And I personally feel that for a girl, she understands much more than a guy does, to some extent, as to what I've always seen.
Perhaps so. But
Yeah.
girls are all said and done irrational, moody, potentially violent. All of that is there.
That's
But
definitely there.
you have to realize it is not just about being a girl or a guy. The very same respect that you would expect for yourself, she deserves it, right? The very same way that you want to be treated is the way you should treat another. There has to be kindness, there has to be compassion, there has to be, most of all, listening. We don't often listen. We are so busy wanting to formulate our answer, we don't really realize. But the thing is, in all of this, like I said, nothing should take over your life. Now, my question wasn't this: witnessing violence in one form or the other. It can be in your friends' relationships. It can be in the neighborhood home. It can be just that one house where every evening you hear screams and shouting from. How do you intervene there? Most people, when you realize, okay, there's some fighting, they say, this is Mia Bibi, they are having their issues, we should not interfere. You think, what should we do there? That is the query that comes up. What can we do? There used to be long time back on Doordarshan something called the Bell Bajao campaign. Have you heard of it?
Not really, but what
That's
was it
simple.
about?
Because most of the time when fights are happening, arguments are happening, it is just because there's no one to intervene. There's no one to put a stop to it. Just so much as go ring that house, the doorbell of that house, and ask for a glass of sugar. Just bring a break into it. Just ask for a glass of sugar. Just ask for coffee. Just ask for, do you know this someone's phone number? Something. Just bring a break. Just go ring the bell. It was called Bell Bajao campaign. It's as, you know, what do you do when you do that? You're breaking that cycle which was going on, something which was escalating.
So,
Wasn't it?
what if the person says that why you invading our privacy?
No, you're not asking anything about the couple or anything. You're asking, says, I ran out of sugar. Do you have some sugar? He might say no, close the door on your face. But he won't go back to that same level of anger which was going on there before. If it happens again, ring the bell once more. You have nothing to lose there. And you might potentially save a life. The very fact that there are neighbors that is listening in or people are around me can stop such behavior. What do you get to lose? Maybe, he might scream at you. Why are you invading my privacy? No, I don't have sugar. You go buy your own. That's all he will say and he closes his door, right?
Correct.
But think of the potential benefits of that. If he was someone who was extremely violent, beating up his wife, and domestic violence might end up in loss of life.
True. True.
You might have saved a life there. That's not much from us. Interfere, intervene. You're traveling in a shared auto. You realize this, and it's late in the evening. You have a fellow passenger who's a woman. You know that you get off before. She has to go a longer way. It, you can just ask her, do you want me to accompany you till you reach your spot? I remember for me when I was long ago working at ICICI, my shifts, even though it would end up early, closing the bank and everything, would get very late. So it used to be around 9:30, 10:30 at night when I would return home. I had this auto driver who would always drop me home, wait for me to go up turn my lights on. It's only then he would leave. And for me at that time, I think I was in my 20s at that point, just having someone, a stranger, I don't even remember his name today, a stranger who would just see that I was safe inside my house was this great degree of comfort for me. Like I said, I don't remember his name, but I always think of him with gratitude. It's something very small. You find someone harassing another woman or a girl or something in public, just ask, do you need my help? They might refuse it because for them you're a stranger too. But just having you intervene, going and asking that, whoever was the potential perpetrator might back away. Just having that awareness that, okay, I am being observed by the world around me, stops many people. This is not a huge thing to do. It can happen in our college campuses also. We find that our friends have a lot of, wannabe lovers hanging around them. You know what to do. It doesn't always have to be anger and violence and come, let's take a basketball and go, and I'm sorry, a baseball bat and go to his house. You don't have to do that. It can be a phone number which is constantly calling up a friend and harassing her. Answer the call on her behalf. There is so much that we can do in our own way, in our own homes. When you see that, when you're seeing, suppose you have a brother who says that, okay, this is how girls are supposed to be, change them, educate them. It can be otherwise. You have a friend who shares not so fun jokes. I understand, I enjoy my jokes as well, but there is a line between respect and disrespect. See the line and clarify it for the others. It doesn't make you a prude. It just makes you a more responsible person to the society, isn't it?
It is.
From my own experience,
Hmm.
where like my neighbor, she's with a boyfriend. So what happened was one day I heard the screaming, so I just went there to look. So the girl told me that thank you so much for coming. He is trying to hit me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just told the boy that whatever may the reason, but you don't have any right to put your hand on me. So then he left the house. So she really thanked me for doing that. And when I came out, the neighbors were like, why chumma, you wanted to go there and interfere in their matters. Just look after your things. So that didn't matter for me. At the end of the day, she felt secure for what I did. So that's what really matters.
That's all we can do for each other. We have to look out for each other. Otherwise, what is the point of being humans? If we cannot help a fellow person, like I said, I don't remember that auto guy's name. Your neighbor may never remember your name, but you will always remember that there was someone, some stranger who stepped up to save me. Maybe nothing would have come of it. He would have said what he wanted to say and go off. But just that I was made to feel safe. And that is all you can do. You don't know who they are. You don't know what trouble you'll get into by now. But just step up. Like, let me ask you, if you see you're on your bike, you're going on the road, a biker in front of you just falls off the bike. Nothing has happened, but his bike just toppled and he just fell off the road. Won't you stop to help and pick him up? We just stop our vehicle and ask, like, fine, we just put the bike back on its wheels and everything, and we just help him dust off, and you go on your own way. It is so much more easier to do that. Why don't we interfere it when it is a problem between a man and a woman? Why does it suddenly become very private? There's something that pulls us back, like, finally it is their problem. Why should we interfere? And there are instances when you do interfere, the woman says, like, look, I'm having a fight with my boyfriend. Why are you interfering? That will happen. Thing is that this is not about us. It is not at all about it. It is about keeping the other person safe. Just say something, just interfere, just step out, step back. You can just, like I said, just ask, do you need help? It's as simple as asking that. Or it can be ringing the bell. Or like, you realize someone is upset, asking them, are you okay? Are you safe at home? What do you do otherwise? Do you need help? Is there something that I can help you out with? I'm here to listen. Having a friend is, and most of the time it is easier to talk to a stranger. You don't want to talk to family, you don't want to talk to friends because You expect that they won't understand. It's so much more easier to talk to a stranger. Haven't you had your own experiences being able to tell a stranger things that are going on in your life than telling your mother or your father?
I think there are certain things which you cannot express in front of your parents, which you can do with your friend.
Really well with someone else. So that is where, and if you find that someone is in a many of the time, women or children who are in such situation do not even realize the danger that they are in. You can just, actually report on behalf of them. Look, I observed this. This is something that I have been saying. Just make sure somebody else knows. Someone in their family, someone in the girl's family, the boy's family. Just pass the message on. Being sitting in a corner, tying our hands and thinking that okay, it is not my business. What if something goes wrong? 1 year from now, something goes wrong. Somebody loses their life or is hurt very badly. Won't you feel like I could have done something to prevent it? Isn't it? Again, like suppose you know a family where it is an abusive family. There will be children in that home. You can talk to the kids. Are you okay? Do you need some help? Maybe they just want to say that I don't know why Appa and Amma fight every day. Okay, the dishes in my house are like unidentified flying objects. It keeps going throwing here and there. Just having someone talk to them makes them feel like I am normal. Otherwise, many a time the children believe that they are the reason for the fights. They take a lot of blame upon themselves. Now, I grew up in a very angry household. All my life, I thought that it was me who was the reason that my parents would fight. Now, I had two younger brothers beneath me, so it is like my job to protect them. Now, grown up, I realized that no, it was never my job. I was a child myself. But the amount of damage, the amount of insecurity that I had to deal with could be taken care of only once I was an adult. You imagine that this is my job. No, it's not. As a child, your job is not to protect your parents. And kids too, actually. They do not say what is going on in their house. Not even, there are teachers who realize that there are certain students in their class who are very upset. At least teachers now are sensitized to it. They ask what is going on. We have a lot of laws that have come up that protect children. Kids are being encouraged to talk. They are being taught about good touch and bad touch and, about violence in homes. They are being given helplines. They are given counselors in school. So yes, there is something that is working on there. But when it comes to gender violence, we still think that, like it said, why are you interfering? It is not your business. It is our business. It is our job to interfere. Okay, we might end up getting name called and all, but that is fine.
Sorry to cut you off.
Tell me.
Likit, will you go ahead and ask the question that says, when does
Ma'am,
it
ma'am, also when there's domestic abuse, what are the steps that women should be taking in terms relating to evidence and legal procedures?
When it comes to legal procedures, like, okay, now when you're talking about domestic violence, it's a situation that you suppose you cannot go back home. You have to walk out of your house. That is a situation because if you go back, it might be difficult. If you're walking out, there are a few documents that you need to have. That includes your marriage certificate, pictures of the proof that you were married, any photographs of any physical injury, getting yourself to a hospital, getting a medical legal complaint registered. An MLC is necessary. Because finally, otherwise, you will end up having no proof that this happened or that happened. If you are going the legal route, this is what you need to do. If there is physical injury, get yourself treated, get a MLC registered. The hospital itself will reach out to the nearest police station. Now, in case you need to file for a case or a divorce or something down the line, you need to have certain documents with you. And that includes your personal documents, your marriage certificate, like I said, your photographs. You have children, then you need their kids' birth certificates, their Aadhaar, and all such documents with you, all certificates. Suppose you want to apply for a job tomorrow. If all your college and school certificates are left back in the marital home, if you don't get access to it, you suppose you cannot go back. What do? You will need them to apply for a job, isn't it? So scan them, upload them, keep them safe somewhere. Look, all of these things, including your Aadhaar, your passport, you can get them reissued. But at that point, when you're in so much of difficulty, so much of trauma, the very thought of having to reapply for your degree certificate, it's this is burden on you. As it is, you were suppose think of yourself as being pushed against a wall. Your face is against a wall. You are not able to think properly. You don't know how to reach out. You don't remember your ATM passwords. You don't have money in hand. You're under extreme stress. So preparing for such a day might be smarter. You don't like I remember just always we tell our survivors in case you're planning to walk out of your house, get a bag ready. That includes a couple of pairs of dresses, includes all your certificates, Aadhaar cards, marriage certificate, birth certificates, passport, your income certificates, any shared property, that one, bank account details. Have that with you because tomorrow you do not know if you have to go back. Okay, again, wedding jewelry, Sridhan and whatever. Have it with you in case you're walking out of the house. It comes to a point, grab your bag, grab your kid, and step out. This is something that because at that moment, at the moment of stress, you're not going to do all of this. If you are in a violent household, you already know that one day or the other things are going to go bad. Keep it safe. Have your now it's a world of social media, so have your passwords, everything changed. Have a mail account into which, in case you're taking photographs of the physical abuse, don't keep it on your physical device. Mail it to yourself, mail it to a friend, mail it to a different couple of different accounts so that tomorrow you can access it, even if you lose your device. Remember password. These are few things that we tell each other. And then again, when it comes to cases and courts, it's all about evidence. How do you have evidence? Now, things that happen within a household, there aren't any witnesses towards it. It's just the husband and wife within a locker room. Write it down, journal it. This is what happened, that is what happened. Keep it. Multiple, because down the line tomorrow, when you are trying to tell it to a police officer, you won't remember 90% of what happened. Document your process, document your journey. In case there is any time that you had to go to a hospital, save those records, keep it somewhere safe. No, like I said, nobody plans on getting out of a relationship and they enter it. But down the line, few months or years or into it, if you realize that this is not what I wanted, this is going wrong, at that time, write it down. Get to a counselor, get to, either to a therapy center or a place that works with survivors of violence, like Bembala is one of them. There is Vimochana, there is Vanita Sahayavani. There are quite a few people who work in this area. Get to someone who can help you. Then again, talk to a lawyer. If you need to go to a police station, do that. File a complaint. And then again, if at home this is happening, the first thing you do is take your phone, dial 100. Call the police home. Let them sort out the rest. All of it can come later. First thing is physical safety. Get yourself to a safe place. Everything else comes later.
So I think we have last 3 questions, I feel. So these were the questions that the girls in our NGO, they wanted to personally ask. So without mentioning names, we will be asking these questions. Likit, would you want to go first?
Yeah. Many women stay despite all the abuse for their children or because of lack of financial independence and many other reasons. What would you want to say to them?
The one thing that you can actually make in life again is money, right? Find yourself a job, even if you have so much as few years left of your life. And I'm talking about women who are in their 50s or 60s, not much of a life left, but live that life, whatever is left of it, with dignity. And women who stay for their children, we believe that kids need 2 parents. I disagree. A child is happy with one healthy parent rather than 2 unhappy ones. As far as a kid is concerned, They only need someone to love them. And it doesn't even need to be a biological parent. They just need someone to love them. They need a soft place to land on. They just need to feel safe. As far as kids are concerned, it doesn't really have to be dad or mom. It can be a grandparent, aunt, uncle. It can be an adoptive parent, can be a step parent, anyone. As long as a child is treated with love and care, that is what a kid needs. Us staying in abusive marriages for long times is our way of thinking that this is what is right. This is our, like, suppose you've invested 20 years into a marriage. And if there is violence in the marriage, you don't leave it, because most of the time, and this is a proven fact, that uh, especially in extremely violent relationships, the violence escalates after you leave. Violence escalates after you leave. You, because as far as the person is concerned, you were their prey all these years. One fine day, you're up and about. I'm not going to let you live. Most homicidal events happens after the woman has left the marriage. Sometimes it is safer to stay in than walk out. That is why many women do stay. Then again, yes, like you said, financial resources, not having a support system, all of that can be made. And I'm not saying it is easy. It is not easy, but it still can be done. Money is the one thing that you can make again. Even if you lose everything that you had, we have enough shelter systems. We have people and systems in place that will help you get back on your feet. I'm not saying they're all perfect or wholesome, or it is the same way that you are used to, but we do have systems in place and they are functional. Walking out takes a lot of courage. Many people don't do it because you've invested more than, say, about 20 years or 30 years in a relationship. Why leave now? I would say broken and bruised. As long as you have one breath left, live that breath with respect, with self respect. However broken you are, you can rebuild yourself. We believe that we don't have a reset button. And I've seen so many women who believed that their lives were over, who absolutely started from scratch, having 2 kids, 3 kids to care for. And it took them time, the journey was hard, but they are thriving. They're absolutely thriving. And they're happy. The kids are happy. They sleep well. They laugh more openly. They have this brightness towards them. It's like, they never thought they would be able to conquer Everest, and they did. The path was very difficult, but they did, and it's a much more fruitful life. And yes, we have laws in place. Go talk to the police, get to the courts. It's long, it's difficult. There'll be a lot of people who misunderstand you. There'll be a lot of people who say, like, finally compromise for the sake of the children. All of them. But as long as you realize that this is not working, it's never going to work again. Because no one relieves a marriage or a family one fine day. Nobody does that. They have come to that decision after maybe years of struggle. They have given everything that they can for the relationship and realized finally nothing is going to work. They've run and compromised, they've given up, they've understood no, this relationship is not healthy for me or for my children. The moment you come to that realization, find your way of getting out. And if you're in a toxic or a violent relationship, getting out should be done very carefully. Plan your exit. Don't just walk out. Like I said, make sure you have your essentials in place. Have a bit of savings in place. If you have jewelry, have that. Have your documents in place. Suppose you're not able to go back to the house, you should not need to go back to the house again. Get everything that you need before you walk out. Have your children along with you. These are basic safe. Have an exit plan. Confide in a one or two good friends. Build your support system. It doesn't need to be your parents or your family. It can be anyone that you trust. Everyone in this world would have someone or the other. It's just that we often think when we are in pain that we think we are very alone. We don't have anybody else. That's what we believe. But we all do have someone out there. We often forget that. We often believe that we are absolutely abandoned. Okay.
So the next question is, when a child is raised in households that have abusive parents, what can be done to raise them in a positive environment after that? Because there is this lot of trauma that is stuck with them after a certain period of time. So
No,
what can
you believe, like I said before, you believe that you are the reason for the fight. There's this huge burden that you are carrying on. The inner child in them is so damaged. You're not allowed to laugh out loudly. You believe that anything that you do can cause problems. And most children who have grown up in violent, abusive, or toxic homes, they are doomed to repeat the patterns unless they understand it. Because look, it was my mom and my dad. I love them. Okay. I know what they did was wrong, but because I love them, I don't want to see one person or the other as bad or good. I can't say Appa was bad. I can't say Amma is bad. I don't want to say that. Why? Because that feels wrong. What do you do? So tomorrow you get into a relationship that is similar to the one that you grew up in. Tomorrow your husband or your wife might be abusive to you and you stay because that feels familiar, that energy feels familiar. You have lived in a house, so you do the same thing. You never reacted before, so you don't react now. Unless you actually understand it, process it, and get out of that feeling of guilt and oppression, most of the time you repeat that pattern. You will find such people having relationships, a lot of relationship troubles. You will wonder that, okay, my friend, why are you putting up with such a person? They say, no, he just did it out of anger. He did it, that day was an upsetting day at work for him. They have these excuses for their partner. You make excuses. They would not make such excuses for any other person. But for this one person, they're ready to make 101 excuses. Such children, if you do realize it, the best thing to do is get yourself into therapy. Get yourself into therapy, talk to a counselor, work through the process. You have to understand it was never your fault. It was never your job. It was never your job to fix them. Kids believe that they have to somehow. They believe that, okay, I can pray if I do this, if I get good marks, if I do, I arrange that thing. Today there won't be a fight. They take it on themselves. You'll find those kids having a lot of issues, physical and mental. They can be depressive, they can be into self-harming, they can be, very clingy in their life, they can be codependent into your relationships. Most of the damage that you see comes from our childhood, the way that we brought up. Again, if I believe that, okay, my father was a good man, but he's hitting my mother, tomorrow when I have a spouse, I might imagine that hitting her is my way of expressing love. You don't see what is wrong in it, isn't it? Get yourself to a therapist, talk. At least find a good friend where you can confide in. We don't talk about these things because, like I said, grown-ups don't realize they are in abusive homes. What about children? They become quiet and withdrawn. If you identify such a child, bring them out of it. Talk to them. Be a friend to them. Tell them it is not their job to fix the parents. Their only job is to be happy and healthy and play. Okay?
Yeah, I think we definitely learned something from this. And I think with this, we come to the end of the candid conversation. Just want to say thank you so much for today. It was very informative, and I personally feel me and Likit, we understood a lot of things after this session because there were so many things that we too did not know about, and
Many of the time we don't realize it.
we
We
don't
don't
realize.
realize it.
The smallest thing is that we don't realize. So maybe after this, when this message is reached to a number of people, they will also understand that how important it is to stress on the fact that everyone is equal.
Everyone is equal.
Yeah.
Pretty much so. We all need to pull it. The thing is that, dividing us on gender is the mistake. As down the line, we are all humans.
Correct.
Our gender or our sexuality or who we are doesn't really, we're just humans. Live, and we're all of us are going through a difficult journey, one way or the other. Help each other out, step up for each other. All right.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, sir.